Good morning. I'm preparing an absolute beginner's drawing class this morning. I've got somebody coming who hasn't done any drawing. I said to him, "Did you do drawing at school?" He said, "Yeah, but I wasn't good. I just never really got the hang of what they were trying to say." So I've had to take myself right back to the beginning, because obviously I paint regularly, and it's hard to imagine what you don't know, what people don't know. So I've taken it right back to the beginning, and I've started with the word line. So the first thing is, what do you make a mark with? Obviously, drawing can come in all different forms depending on what you're drawing on and what you're drawing with. So you can do a drawing in the sand with your finger. It's just the making a mark, doing a line which follows a shape or a pattern. But today I'm just going to start, because art is so vast, isn't it? It's kind of, I would really like to be good at art, but where do I start? And I think that's what this guy wants. He wants to know, how do I navigate? Where do I start with this? I would like to have drawing, painting, art as a hobby, but where on earth do I start? So I'm going to start with just the basic concept of shape. So when I look at something and I want to draw it, first of all, I've got to think, what am I going to draw it with? What am I going to draw it on? So let's say I've got a pencil and a piece of paper. Now, there are lots of different pencils, and that's a lesson in itself. There are lots of different types of paper. That's a lesson in itself. But I'm just, today, to start, I've got, on my pencil, it says 3B. Now, if it said 2H, that would be the lead in the pencil, the graphite in the pencil it is nowadays, but that would be very hard and quite pale. And this is 3B, which means I can do really pale lines, but it does, because it's 3B, it does give me the possibility to do darker lines like that. Now, I'm looking outside my window here. I'm looking at some foxgloves. They're a kind of flower which grows tall and has lots of little bell-shaped petals, which the bees go up inside. So as I'm looking at it, I'm breaking it down in my mind into really simple shapes, because to make it look exactly as it looks there as I'm looking at it, I've got to think, well, where do I start as a beginner? Well, the distinctive thing about foxgloves is that they have a central stem which is quite tall, and actually it does bend at the top, but in a basic format, as I'm thinking here, I'm just going to start by doing a straight line, and then I look at the straight line and I kind of look, so it sort of starts straight at the bottom, but it's curving. So I look at this straight line and I think, what's the difference between that straight line and what I'm looking at? And I think, well, actually, about, let's say, a third of the way down, if I break that into 3 parts, and it's fine to leave your working drawings on the drawing when you start drawing. You don't need to rub this out. It's interesting to see people's working drawings. So that's the bottom third, which is fairly rigid and straight. The middle third, again, fairly rigid and straight. But as it gets to the top, there's a slight, it's not straight like that. I can imagine it in my mind. No, it's got a slight curve. So I'm just going to take that off like that to the side, like that. Now, the bell-shaped petals or little flowers on it, I'm going to simplify by making them rectangles. So the rectangles at the very top are quite small. They're just little, and rather than making it up. I'm going to simplify it as I look at it, but I'm going to keep what I do choose to draw. I'm going to draw as accurately as I can, but I mean, and then I'm going to look at these rectangles and I'm going to think, what's the difference between the rectangle I've got on my page and what I'm actually looking at? Well, as I look at them, the difference is that there's a curve. They're not completely square at the bottom, they're curved. But I can start by drawing them as rectangles. That will simplify it. And as I get a third of the way down there, they are becoming bigger. So again, I'm going to draw them as rectangles to start with. But I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, well, what's the difference between the rectangle and what I'm actually looking at? So one of the differences is that the bottom of the petal is open. So there's a kind of, I'm going to make the bottom of it into a square. See that? So then already there's a way for the bees to get in. So I'm just simplifying it all. Now, when I get down to the bottom third of the plant, there are leaves there and they're catching the light in different angles. But at the moment, I'm not concerned with anything but estimating what the shapes are like. What are they closest to? Are they closest to a triangle, a rectangle, or a circle? So as I look at that, the one that's closest to me is most like a circle. So I'm going to put a circle there. And then the one that's over here is most like a triangle. So I'm going to put a triangle there. And actually, what is that? It's a kind of triangle here as well. And they're going up. They're a bit like triangles. That one looks like a circle because it's coming at me from a different angle. So I'm just going to notice what the shape is like. And as the leaves get lower down, they get bigger. So I'm going to do them, they're going to start getting bigger here. But they're still sort of triangles. So do you see, I'm starting to create the shapes within the foxglove. I'm going to show you the foxglove now because it's lovely. It's sitting right outside my window. There we are. So it doesn't look much at the moment, but if I carried on with that, with the larger triangles at the bottom, and as we go up, getting a bit smaller, the larger rectangles here, I'll do a few more. It's tempting to just kind of make them into a pattern, but the idea when you start drawing is rather than making doing a pattern of what you think they might look like, is actually to really look, and you will learn things about that plant as you look at it. So those rectangles, they are flowers that are coming from, there's a little stem, and then there's a little green bit here. Oops. So there's a little stem. Oops, where was it coming from? Yeah, here. Let's just turn you a bit like that. There's a little stem and a little, it's like a hat. And within that, I'm going to put the rectangle. And then I notice as I look at it, so that's a kind of, just a beginning to take the form. But as I look at it again, and I think, what's the difference between that rectangle and what I'm looking at there? Well, it's got a kind of a curve to it here. And then it's going a bit more like that. And then just above it here, there's another one. And it's doing the same thing. It's got a curve to it, and it's got a hat which is holding on to the stem. So it's quite difficult drawing upside down. But you'll find that if you sit and just look at something and think about the difference between a circle, a triangle, a rectangle, and a straight line, it's a way of simplifying the shapes to give you a starting point. And that's all you need when you start. The reason we do that is because we're used to handwriting. We can already do, triangles, because you can do a capital A. You can do an O, so you know how to do a circle. So there are, you could do it with letters if you wanted to look at what you're looking at and think, well, which letter is it most like? Anyway, that would be interesting. That would make an interesting foxglove. Yeah, I might do that. Anyway, that's the very beginning of thinking about lines and shapes. So the next thing, because when you're looking at something and you're trying to make everything else disappear and just that one thing that you're looking at makes sense to your mind. So you try to bring it as close to a shape, as a familiar shape as you know, and then you adjust it to what it actually looks like. And that's the enjoyment, because you just get so focused on looking at something and finding the shapes within it. And then before you know it, you've done something that really resembles what you're looking at, hopefully. And if it doesn't, don't give up. Have another go. Think to yourself, well, why? Why does it not look like that? And the more you do it, the more you kind of train your eye to see, not to guess, but to actually see. Yeah, it's worth doing.